CCA. Who wins, who loses, who's still alive. Not just a program now, it's a change in industry. This isn't just a new drone. This is the end of the old aerospace system.
For 70 years, the defense aerospace industry operated under a predictable oligopoly, where the big five primes built exquisite manned fighters on 10 to 20-year development cycles at costs exceeding $80 million per aircraft. The emergence of collaborative combat aircraft, or CCA, has fundamentally shattered this model by creating a new market for autonomous drones designed to fly alongside manned fighters as affordable, attritable force multipliers. The urgency behind this shift is rooted in the Pentagon's growing concern over China's anti-access area denial, or A2AD capabilities in the Taiwan Strait, where simulations predict that the U.S. Air Force would exhaust its expensive manned fighters and highly trained pilots within weeks of sustained conflict. The CCA program offers a radical solution, saturating enemy radar with hundreds of low-cost drones, creating a saturation strategy that preserves pilot lives while overwhelming advanced air defense systems. The U.S. Air Force has formalized this vision by requesting approximately $1 billion in procurement funding for fiscal year 2027, building on the $678 million already allocated in mandatory fiscal year 2025 funds. With a unit cost target strictly capped between $20 and $30 million, roughly one-third the price of an F-35, the service plans to field over 150 combat-ready CCA by 2030, with long-term ambitions exceeding 1,000 aircraft. The CCA market is not merely a new acquisition program for the U.S. Air Force. It represents a fundamental industrial restructuring where the traditional barriers to entry, decades of relationship building, billion-dollar production facilities, and exclusive access to sensitive technologies are being circumvented by speed, modular design, and software-defined architectures. The primes built their empires on selling exquisite platforms over 30-year life cycles. The CCA market operates on 5-year life cycles, commercial supply chains, and continuous software updates. This shift does not just threaten Lockheed and Boeing's market share, it threatens their entire business model, forcing them to compete on agility and cost rather than legacy and lobbying power. The definitive winners of CCA Increment 1 are Anduril Industries and General Atomics Aeronautical Systems, the two non-traditional contenders selected by the U.S. Air Force in June 2026 for production contracts, decisively sidelining the legacy primes. General Atomics achieved the first milestone when its FQ-42A Dark Merlin conducted its maiden flight on August 27, 2025, exactly 16 months after the contract award, a pace that Air Force Secretary Troy Mike publicly hailed as proof that the service could deliver combat capability at unprecedented speed. Anduril followed closely with its FQ-44A Fury, which completed its first semi-autonomous flight on October 31, 2025, clocking an astonishing 556 days from a clean sheet design to airborne prototype. Anduril's victory carries historical weight, as the company itself noted that this marks the first time a new firm has won a U.S. fighter aircraft program since the 1970s, signaling a seismic shift in industrial power. However, the competition for the autonomy software, the brain of these aircraft, produced an even more complex outcome, with the Air Force down-selecting Anduril Lattice, Shield AI's HiveMind, and RTX Collins to advance to the production phase. Crucially, this software decision excluded Lockheed Martin, General Atomics, and Northrop Grumman from moving forward in that specific autonomy track, proving that dominance in airframes does not guarantee dominance in artificial intelligence. In a dramatic twist, Anduril had actually failed its initial autonomy prototype phase in mid-2025, but the company invested heavily in internal development and successfully flew its new software stack on February 24, 2026, clawing its way back to victory and exemplifying the agile, resilient culture that defines the new market. The undisputed losers of Increment 1 are Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman, the traditional primes that have dominated manned fighter production for generations, but were entirely shut out of the primary airframe production contract. Lockheed Martin, builder of the F-35 and F-22, was perceived as the natural favorite, yet the company was crippled by its own success, as its engineering teams were dangerously overstretched fixing the protracted software delays of the F-35 Block 4 and TR-3 upgrades, leaving little bandwidth for a fast-moving CCA competition. Boeing, meanwhile, suffered from a cascade of crises across both its commercial and military divisions, including the troubled KC-46 tanker and T-7 Red Hawk programs, which eroded the Air Force's confidence in the company's ability to execute with speed and fiscal discipline. Northrop Grumman, while still a respected prime, found itself excluded from the autonomy software downselect as well, meaning the company lost not only the airframe contest, but also the critical software battle that will define future upgrades. The financial implications for these primes are staggering, as the CCA program represents a potential market worth tens of billions of dollars over the next decade, revenue streams that are now flowing directly to competitors. More damningly, the Air Force has explicitly broken the traditional vendor lock model by separating the software contract from the hardware, ensuring that no single prime can monopolize the ecosystem, as Lockheed has done with the F-35. For the first time in modern military aviation, the incumbents are not just losing contracts, they are losing relevance in the fastest-growing segment of their own industry. Despite their crushing defeat in Increment 1, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman are far from dead, as the Air Force has deliberately structured the CCA program with multiple on-ramps, ensuring that Increment 2, expected to feature more advanced and versatile systems, remains an open competition with over 9 vendors already vying for position. Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division has responded aggressively by self-funding a new CCA design called Vectis, a Group 5 stealth-optimized aircraft that leverages the company's unparalleled experience in low-absorbable technologies, with a targeted maiden flight in late 2027 to position itself for international sales and Increment 2. Boeing's survival hinges on its MQ-28 Ghostbat program in Australia, which has proven remarkably successful. The Australian government committed an additional 1.4 billion Australian dollars in December 2025 to transition the Ghostbat into full production. And on December 8, 2025, the aircraft achieved a historic milestone by successfully conducting an autonomous air-to-air weapon engagement. Launching an AIM-120 AMRAAM to destroy a target drone in a complex kill chain involving an E-7A Wedgetail and an FA-18F Super Hornet. The Ghostbat has since accumulated over 150 flight hours and 20,000 hours of virtual testing, and it began flying in the United States in May 2026, participating in the Valiant Shield exercise in June 2026 to demonstrate its interoperability with U.S. forces. Northrop Grumman has carved out a parallel path by securing the U.S. Marine Corps CCA integration contract with Kratos' X-58 Valkyrie, a $231 million 24-month award that keeps the company actively engaged in the operational CCA ecosystem even without an Air Force airframe win. Collectively, these primes remain alive because the CCA market is not a winner-take-all contest, but a sustained industrial campaign where production scale, global export relationships, and the ability to solve complex integration problems will determine long-term survival. The CCA revolution is permanently restructuring the defense aerospace industry along the lines of a classic disruptive innovation curve, where established incumbents optimized for high-end performance are outflanked by new entrants offering good enough capability at radically lower cost. The Air Force has deliberately engineered this restructuring by breaking the software monopoly, mandating open architectures, and prioritizing speed over perfection, forcing primes to abandon their traditional cost-plus, decade-long development culture in favor of fixed-price, rapid iteration delivery. This is not a temporary shift driven by one generation of drones. It is a structural realignment of how combat aircraft are designed, built, upgraded, and sustained. The primes that survive will be those that can internalize the culture of their startup competitors, while the disruptors that thrive will be those that can industrialize their prototype successes without losing their agile DNA. However, the narrative of disruptors triumphing over primes is incomplete without acknowledging the most critical bottleneck: mass production. Anduril has never manufactured aircraft at the scale required by the Air Force, which demands over 100 aircraft for Increment 1 alone, and the global supply chain for affordable turbofan engines, the heart of these drones, remains severely constrained, with even established players like Kratos and GE struggling to secure enough power plants. General Atomics itself experienced a sobering setback in April 2026 when its FQ-42A suffered an autopilot fault that paused testing for a month, reminding the industry that prototype success does not guarantee operational reliability at scale. The primes, for all their bureaucratic inertia, still possess the sprawling factories, supplier networks, and quality assurance systems necessary to produce thousands of complex aircraft, and they could easily acquire their startup rivals if the financial calculus becomes favorable. Ultimately, the CCA story is not a fairy tale where the young heroes vanquish the old villains forever. It is a high-stakes industrial war where the winners will be those who can combine the disruptive speed of Silicon Valley with the brute manufacturing capacity of traditional Detroit, and the final chapter has yet to be written.